A warm welcome to this health and performance series powered by Hintsa Performance and by Check-up Center Hirslanden in Zurich. In this series, we aim to help you improve your health and performance with measurable results, because in the end, performance is really very much related and dependent on your well-being, your health, and your happiness. And so therefore, today, I'm delighted to have two experts that will share their expertise with us on performance, on muscles, on biomechanics, and of course on pain, because in the end, we all at some point experience pain. My name is Dr. Erat. I'm a medical director at the Hirslanden Check-up Center here in Zurich. And I'm really delighted to have two experts here today. For one, Professor Patrick Vavken, who's a specialist in orthopedic surgery and, of course, biomechanics, muscles, and so forth. And then, of course, Hannu Luomajoki, who's also a professor here in Zurich, also specialized in the same areas. It's wonderful to have you here today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So Patrick, if I start with you, what is your connection and what is your background? Can you tell me a little bit about your background and connection to the theme that we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, so I have the typical biomechanics and orthopedic backgrounds. I always wanted to do sports as a kid. I was clumsy, so I got hurt a lot. So I was halfway through medical training before I was even 18. And then I went into actual medical school, did orthopedics, followed up with sports medicine. And naturally, once you get into the sports realm, you understand that it's not just the bones that break. It's really about performance, how you bring the force vectors and the energy onto the field to get where you want to go.
Great. And Hannu, what about you?
I'm a physiotherapist, and nowadays I'm a professor for physiotherapy in the Zurich University of Applied Sciences, ZHAW. But I'm working also by Hintsa Performance as biomechanic specialist. And I have been always treating patients. However, the last 15 years I have been academics, doing some research in musculoskeletal problems, back pain, neck pain, and so on. And I'm fascinated about these problems. They are so huge. So many people have problems. And the question, what can you do? And in many cases, very simple things can be done. And it doesn't always need injections or medication or surgery. You can do exercises and train for yourself. Absolutely.
Actually, in the majority of cases, you really do not need surgery. But then in the end, that might be also necessary. Patrick, we both have worked at the Harvard Medical School with similar kinds of patients, and also now with Swiss ice hockey, with the national teams. What would you say, what are typical injuries in these athletes, and what is really typically leading to pain that you not necessarily have to treat with a surgery, but with physiotherapy, with trigger point therapy, with osteopathy and various conservative methods?
So you can break this down into two groups, basically. On the pro level, you get the usual concussions, the broken arms, the broken collarbones, separated shoulders. But the pros are pros, right? So the endorphins are flying high, the adrenaline is high, they don't feel any pain. They just keep going and going and going, and they'll force themselves through. And then it's the weekend warrior, people like us who want to do sports, who want to stay involved, might have gotten a little older than they used to be. And for us, the number one reason is overuse. Or let's call it stubbornness. We want to do more than we can do, really, and we should listen to our bodies a little more. And in this scenario, pain is often a warning sign. It's just you're asking for too much, or you're not investing enough into recuperation and rest and recovery, maybe not in nutrition and sleep, like all the little things that we talked about in the other Hintsa talks, right? And so dealing with these can really help you. And then you have to understand at what point pain is actually helping you, guiding you down your training path, and at what point it becomes pathological and you have to do something about it in terms of medicine. And it doesn't have to be surgery. Surgery is about structural issues, when something is misplaced or broken or malaligned, so to speak. But a lot of things are about functional issues, and you can't force function with a knife. And that's where physio kicks in, or osteopathy and all the other things, where you can tweak your muscles, you can tweak how you put the force onto the ground and how you propel yourself forward, and that will help with your pain. And that's really what biomechanics is about.
Yeah, absolutely. Hannu, I mean, you have so much experience, and we don't have to talk about top athletes. I mean, we have a lot to do also with absolute normal people, or people who are just very motivated to maybe also do a marathon or 10K run or whatnot. So you, of course, are very experienced with the entire population as well, not only the top athletes. What can you say about pain, and why do we have pain, and why do we experience pain differently, in your opinion?
Yeah, good question. I think basically we can differentiate like two kinds of pain. So we have acute pain, like Patrick was saying, you have an injury and you have acute pain, and it's a warn sign. So if you broke your leg, it's not a good idea to go walking. So
No.
you have pain that you can't do it. But then we have chronic pain, so persistent pain, where it's not anymore a worn function, but then a lot of more context factors come in. It could be fear or anxious, or you think you shouldn't, or you think something is still broken although it's already healed. And then once in a while it gets complicated. And then you really have to see all the lifestyle factors. So how are you sleeping? What are you eating? How active you are? And so on. So then we really have to look at pain in a holistic way.
Absolutely. And the overuse is really interesting, that we see daily in our clinical
Yes,
profession.
exactly. Like Patrick was saying, some people do too much. So they don't get enough rest, they don't sleep well, and you have to break them down. Hey, take it easy, relax, take 2 weeks off. And once in a while it's a bit difficult because people are so eager. I have to exercise, otherwise I get weak. And in many cases it's not true. You need to relax as well.
Well, that's a really good point. In the previous session we were talking about also supercompensation and how important it is for your body to regenerate in order to improve performance. Because in the end, if we don't achieve supercompensation, so to compensate for the training and the micro damage that was done during the training, we will not improve. On the contrary, if we're really unlucky, we get worse and worse and worse. So more is not better. It's really the accurate and the optimal training that really leads us to achieve peak performance, whether a hobby sportsman or a top athlete or an office worker or a cook. And but why do we experience pain so differently? I mean, this I find remarkable. Some people break their collarbone and they feel almost nothing, and some people are absolutely devastated and cannot move when they break their collarbone.
That's exactly like you say. It's really very individual. So, for example, I had last year 2 colleagues, and they had injuries with their knees, and that was really bad. And you think, oh my God, that looks bad, and so on. However, I followed them for a few weeks, and they both say they didn't have any pain. And I was wondering, how come? And that was because they were so confident, they understood what's going on. Okay, now it needs time and my tissues have to heal and so on. So they were very confident. However, then we have people, they get fearful and anxious, and they are making worries and thinking, oh, what's going on, and so on. And through these own thoughts, they are actually like exaggerating the pain. Yeah. So it has also to do some psychological factors.
Well, particularly now with this COVID pandemic that we have all experienced way too long and unfortunately had to deal with on various levels, unfortunately. A lot of people have also been in home office. So what we really see is an increase, for instance, in back pain. Because when you're in your office, tendentially, you have a good chair, a good way to sit, a good setting where you can work properly. In home office, you might sit on the sofa, you might sit in the kitchen and just be twisting and maybe doing something with the other hand while lifting the laptop with the other. So we really see that, a huge increase in, for instance, back pain. Patrick, what could you recommend for people to do in order to prevent back pain in the first place?
Well, that's actually a great point. And the interesting thing, the home office, the nature of the home office has changed a lot, especially around here, where early on people did what you said. They sat on the sofa, on the couch, on the floor, did their email while they're doing the kitchen or something else. And as it progressed, we have seen that a lot of people actually took up arms and they bought tons of equipment. They have better desks at home that they have in their offices now, but they also staffed their basement with tons of weights and whatnot. And it breaks down into 2 groups of people. The one is sort of the lazy, let's call them slouches. that naturally are inclined to have a comfortable lifestyle, and they use the opportunity to actually, sweatpants Friday, all of a sudden they sweatpants every day. And they lost muscle mass, they have poor posture, and then they put a lot of stress on structures that are not supported by strength, and then it produces pain on this side. So they need to train out, work out a little more, train a little more, and find back that strength. And that's a strenuous progress, because building strength is painful. And like you said, it's important to understand you're not building strength during training, but because of training in the rest period after. And that's what some other people don't understand. And they do 2 emails and then 500 push-ups, and another email and then bench 300 pounds because everything at home. And they just overdo it. And they don't rest at all because, they have a lot of time on the computer, they go on Instagram and TikTok, and they think that's real people that they see, and I want to be just as shredded as this supposedly 70-year-old is. Right. And then it just go all nuts. And they actually sprain something, hurt something, or they just overtrain. And the more they overtrain, they go into fatigue, the body can't deal with it, so the performance suffers. As they train more, they get weaker, and they get angry because they want to be strong, so they train even harder and get even weaker. And that's a vicious circle, and you have to break it. And then I want to pick up on what you said, and that might be the most important thing for us doctors to do. Pain is driven by a number of factors, culture, environment, daily performance, weather, mood, and whatnot. But fear, and especially the fear of the unknown, is the number one reason why people suffer more than they need to. And once they know what they're doing wrong, why they're suffering, and what they can do to make it better or the damage is lost, this sense of inevitable doom is gone. And we can tell them, listen, this and this is going on with you, you can fix it this way, and all of a sudden, bada boom, bada bang, they're much better without doing anything other than just informing them and helping them understand what's going on.
Yeah. Coming back to home office, it's very interesting now. New studies are coming in from what's happening in the home office. And one big study from USA just came out, and they showed that people have become inactive. Mm-hmm. So it's like about 50% less steps and exercise and training and so on. And the second thing that's pretty awful is this is a study from St. Gallen University just 2 weeks ago and so on, that, for example, average middle-aged Swiss person has put on weight 6.5 kilos within this corona time. So that's really a worry. So I think people should really be moving more and doing exercises. And so we have those both. Yes. Inactive or too much activity.
Yeah, and it's really interesting what you're saying. We call it corona fat because we really see that. Yeah. I would say about 80%, not all, but 80% have really gained significantly weight, which is interesting. And of course that can lead to back pain as well, as we know, or joint pain. The more we weigh, the more overweight we are or obese we are.
Heart disease. Diabetes, metabolism problems.
And also the joints and the spine and the back.
So I think for a big grey mass of people, a real problem is inactivity. So they are not getting enough exercise. And what you should do on home office is really get up, walk, do some push-ups, do some training, and not just work like 9 hours and then go for a jog. You have to break down, you have to do pauses, and you have to walk and do some exercising during the day as well.
But do it smartly, not 500 push-ups and then nothing again. And then, I mean, it's always about the balance. And for that, we need also coaching at times. I mean, this is just, why not? We have experts, we have lawyers that we use, we have medical doctors that we go to when we have a cough. Why not get some coaching, proper coaching when you're starting again and not going from 0 to 100 in one go, but really do it smartly, which is, of course.
But this is making this so valuable, because what you have to drive home is your knee pain or your back pain or your shoulder pain is not just knee pain or back pain or shoulder pain. It's your knee is part of your organism, and it needs the nutrients from your food, it needs the water from your drink, it needs the rest period to build the little molecules that it needs for the synovial fluid. And people tend to simplify things, but I'm just going to get an injection, I'll be fine. Sure. Like, no, you have to. What's the Michael Jackson lyrics from The Man in the Mirror? You have to make, you start with yourself, and then everything gets better. But, stick to a regimen that includes everything, and that's holistic, and not just, I'll just take a pain pill and that will take care of everything.
And also hydration, as you said so rightly. Right. That's something that we underestimate, how important it is also for the joints and the musculoskeletal systems and the biomechanics. I mean, absolutely. And it's all interconnected anyhow in the end, I mean, clearly. Hannu, what do you do yourself to keep fit and keep away pain and build up here?
I do have to admit that I really like sports. So I would do, I think, 4 or 5 times a week sports. I go running, I go fitness, wintertime skiing and so on. And in summertime I play golf. I really like golf. Many people don't see it as a sport, but however, you are walking 10 kilometers and you get a lot of movement, and of course it's social. You go with friends, you can chat and so on. So it's really healthy sports. But I'm really a believer of sports and training. I really think it's very important, and for me it's one of the most important things in my life to get exercise and keep fit.
Yeah. And what about you, Patrick?
Oh, you know me, I'm the crazy overdoer type, the unreasonable weekend warrior. And I'm at the point in life where a lot of people are right now. You know, you've gotten into business, you have a busy schedule, you have kids you want to take care of, but you used to be really good at running and triathlons and whatnot. So I've sat down with myself, basically, try to rein in the crazy and be a little more reasonable about my own expectations in sport and do exactly that. Come up with a good regimen. You have to train on a regular basis. You can't just work out like crazy for 3 days and then take off for a month. So you have to break it down, and you have to make time for sports in a busy day. That's an important thing. It's an effort. It's just making time is the first step in your exercise, basically. Add in my expectations. I can't run like I did when I was 18 or 20, and that's fine because I'm twice as old now. There's different things, and you have to know why you're doing this. You want to get a clear head. Do you want to compete? Do you want to be stronger? Do you want to lose your corona fat? You have to make sure that your objectives, your targets, are matched with what you're doing, right? Think about nutrition. Think about hydration. I don't drink enough. I try to do, but it's mostly coffee. It should be more water. You know how it is with medicine and surgery. You get 5 minutes every 2 hours for a sip of water, and that's it. And this way, I've lost my corona weight. I didn't hurt myself too badly so far, and I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing at this point. But this might change.
Well, I'm really glad to hear. We were lucky enough, of course, to also be able to go to work, and this has an impact, as you said before. Some people did 18,000 steps a day just naturally by taking the train, then walking to work, taking the steps or stairs up to their offices and back and forth and down and up. And all of that, when you add that up, you really get some exercise through absolutely normal daily activity. And when that when you don't get that anymore because of home office and so forth, that has a huge impact, that we see. I mean, going from 0 steps from 18,000 steps to 0 steps, that just has an impact.
Exactly, yeah.
So, absolutely. But what do you do then when you have an overuse injury or you have a disalignment where it can lead to pain? As a physiotherapist, what can you do?
Well, if you have something acute, so like overuse injury, let's say tennis elbow would be a classic example. I think at first, have a break, maybe 2 weeks. Don't do anything, try to relax, don't go playing, don't do anything with your arm, and then start smoothly and slowly and get back to the activity, not from 0 to 100, but gradually.
Yeah. And of course, you can always do something else, like stretching or work your...
You can go biking.
Exactly. It's just important to keep let your elbow rest.
Your legs and so on. Exactly. That's a great idea. Yeah.
Because letting your injured part rest doesn't mean you can't do anything else, as we of course know, and that's important to also consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That actually also goes both ways. If you have somebody who hurt, say, their knee or their foot, right, and they had foot surgery or a cast for a broken ankle, they're going to get physio for the ankle, and they're going to work on the ankle, but the whole leg has suffered because they didn't run and walk at all. so they will have hip pain or knee pain if they just jump back into running. And that's what we see in pro athletes. They get hurt on the right hand and they go back on the field. Also on the left hand is the one that's suffering because everything has deteriorated. And then you have to, again, remember that it's one big thing and you can't just assume that's only this finger that was broken and the thumb is going to be fine. Mm-hmm. And that's how people get into trouble.
Absolutely. And also the imbalance then,
right.
Because as you know, everyone that has had a cast at some point has seen in person how the muscle just shrinks.
It goes very fast.
It goes so quickly, even in children, even in young people,
just
and of course
away.
in elder people even more. As you know, as of the age of 30, in average, we start losing about 1% of muscle mass a year. So we have to counteract that. Yeah. And that's at an older age.
So that's a good point that even in an acute injury, you should still keep doing some exercises, just put that body part in rest, but do all the other things,
And what do you recommend to people to get symmetry? Because obviously some people have one leg shorter than the other, which is already kind of an imbalance. But other people they do more with the right side. For instance, young mothers that have newborn babies, they tend to carry the baby always on the right side, so the left side doesn't get as much exercise.
Well, basically, I wouldn't care so much about that if you have some asymmetries. Like you hear in many cases that my legs are different length and so on, and my pelvis
you always hear that.
or my pelvis is not straight and so on. It doesn't matter so much. However, of course, if you get pain or problems because of that, then you of course have to train the other side more, or you have to maybe increase your shoe sole that is a little bit higher and so on.
Inlays
but basically, I wouldn't be that picky because you will always find something. You will always find, by everybody, you will find some kind of asymmetries and so on. And we shouldn't make normalities to illnesses.
Sure. But what's interesting, though, I see that, for instance, in people that are very inspired to, let's say, run a marathon. They train, they go jogging, but they forget the core muscles, the muscle strength. And that can also lead to overuse and injury because there you, of course, then forget all the strength and just do cardiovascular endurance training. What do you consider, or what do you tell your patients? How should they build up their core muscle?
Well, that's a good point. I think I see a lot of runners, like really hobby runners, who are just going running and maybe some stretching, but they don't train their stomach and back muscles and hip muscles. Glutes are very important. So you just have to get some basic exercises. Like planking is very easy, or you can just go all fours on the floor and lift your legs backwards and sideways. Just get some exercise for your gluteus muscles and your core muscles. That's very important,
And you can even do that at home. You don't necessarily have to go to the gym, which we have noticed in the past year and a half or so.
And the same if you're playing tennis or golf. Again, you need really good stomach muscles.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, but at some point then, unfortunately, we get to a point where surgery is needed. So how do you decide whether to do surgery or not? Let's talk about the back, for instance. Or we can also go and talk about the shoulder. It doesn't matter. You choose which joint or which system.
The decision-making process is very similar for all the different ones. Obviously, if you have an acute injury, a fracture, a trauma, then there's no fuzzing around. This needs treatment because it might be a life-threatening or quality of life-threatening condition. And then there's the overuse ones and the other ones. And good point to pick up, for example, is, like you said, with the asymmetrical problems. A lot of people, they tend to, what they see is the culprit for what they experience. And, they want to be a marathon runner. They're not fast enough. Oh, it must be my leg length difference. It's not the fact that I'm not, maybe I can't run any faster or I'm training wrong or something. So because it's something that's tangible. So usually you want to approach this, and this is a horrible, horrible cause to do surgery. But eventually, in all people and with all problems, you get to a point where you see, well, there's a realistic expectation and very, very objective deficiency that we can't make any better using all other measures that are less risky, less invasive, or less dangerous. And then you wanna talk about surgery. If the risk is really offset by the benefits that the patient might experience. And then you want to choose for the simplest thing to do, and also keep an eye on the future. Because in a lot of these things, especially if it's the degeneration or things that have been worn and torn, there is thinking as we get older and live longer, you might have to go back and do a second surgery 20 years down the road. So don't burn any bridges at this point, because what will you do later on? And this has become more and more an issue as we get older and still stay more active. 20 years ago, people at 80 didn't do marathons, they didn't do triathlons, they didn't lift any weights. Nowadays, it's sort of common, actually, right? And then you need to offer these people something as well. So you have to be mindful of the future.
I mean, that's really a good point. For instance, with knee replacement, for instance,
Yeah.
we're very hesitant about doing a replacement early on. We want to wait not as long as possible, but as long as medically indicated, right. Because we want to long-term also
right.
make sure that people stay mobile and that the prognosis is really good.
Right, and there's tons of new things, new technologies that we can use at this point to delay the need for bigger surgery, little things they can do and tweak around to just win a couple of years.
Absolutely.
And it might not be a definitive treatment, but honestly, if somebody just gave me 5 years of great quality of life, I'd take it.
Yeah, yeah. And before surgery, of course, infiltrates, well, depending on the problem, but when we talk about, for instance, knee pain, you start with infiltrations, and I see more and more patients also with injections of platelet-rich plasma. What do you think about the platelet-rich plasma therapy? Is there enough evidence that it really regenerates or at least slows down the wear and tear of the meniscus, for instance?
Right, for some things there is. I mean, there's vampire facelifts. People get it if they have a recession of hairline like I do. And I don't know about these, and I've never tried it, so to be honest. Let's see about the future. Be mindful of the future. But we do know that when it comes to, it's basically just blood, and blood has the capacity to heal. It's like super glue, basically, like crazy glue. And we have tissues in our body that are not well perfused, like a meniscus, or like the discus in the back, or tendons in your joints. And by just taking the cells that do the wound healing, that do the scar tissue formation, and that convince the other cells to build collagen and scar tissue, you can enhance healing where there would be healing. It's not magic. It's not a potion where something that's totally dead will all of a sudden grow back, right? But if there's biological activity, you can boost it, you can increase it to some extent, and then it will heal. But on the other hand, again, this is just as much as balance as everything else. If you overboost, you get a very poorly structured scar with poor biomechanical qualities. It might be thick, but it'll be weak, right? So that's not way to go either. And then the other thing, even if it works perfectly, again, the balance and the training aspect. The tendon will be stronger, but it won't increase your strength or your flexibility or your alignment.
That would be my take on these.
So you have to put it together.
But right. we see so many people with degenerative changes right. and problems. So from 45 years onwards till 60, we saw so many people with problems with their knees and shoulders and backs and so on. And in most of the cases, again, it's a case that the muscles are weak and tendons are thin. So again, they need training. And there is a large body of evidence nowadays that actually training exercises are very, very useful, very effective. And like you said, we have to try to get time going that you don't do big surgery too early. Because the question, well, what do you do then when you're 70?
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's a super important point that you also made. In your daily life and as a coach and as a physiotherapist, also for top athletes and the entire population, have you experienced something where you thought, okay, this is not going to work through physiotherapy, surgery might be needed, but then through really proper systematic therapy, you really reached goals that you really did not think could
Well, I have to admit, like 2 or 3 years ago, a lady, 35 years old, came to me and really had chronic pain all over the body. And I listened to the story and I was thinking, no hope and so on. However, she was very motivated and she came to me because she wanted exercises. And I said, okay, let's start somewhere. So we started somewhere at the low back and work with the hip mobility and so on, strengthen the muscles and so on. And slow by slow, she got better. And at some point, that was maybe 12 months later, she came maybe once a month to me. She was saying, Hannu, my pain is much better. And oh, wow, I have to admit, I didn't expect that. And she was saying, and I was asking, well, why do you think so? And, because I'm doing my exercises every day and I'm doing those things that we have been talking. And I have to say, wow, even me, I wouldn't have thought it.
Right.
So in some cases, when you really stay on the ball and you really keep on doing your exercises, you can reach really much. Yeah.
We also see that in rehabilitation after surgery, how crucial it is that the patient goes to proper rehabilitation, does proper physiotherapy, strengthens the muscles again, gets elasticity and mobility in place. I mean, this is absolutely crucial, also in bigger surgeries, as I'm sure you witnessed.
Yes, and that circles back to what we said before. Surgery can help you to fix structural damages. It won't improve function in its own right. So people have to be, they stay motivated and they have to stay in the game and they have to keep going. And that's actually the magic that you guys have to do. We have an amazing ability to heal and an even almost uncanny ability to compensate for defects. People live with one eye, one arm, one leg, one kidney, half a liver or something. So you have to bring both together if you want to get to the best performance. So surgery is no shortcut to being well. It's just one step in a long chain of steps that you have to take one at a time. And this can help you, same with PRP. It's like fertilizer for your plants. They'll grow a little faster. You still have to water them. You still need sunshine and everything. They just won't grow by themselves in the basement, right? And then if everything comes together, and that's the physio, that's the surgery if needed, and we're still circling back to nutrition. In our age, we don't absorb as much anymore as we should and need, so we need to supplement. Rest, because we heal during rest, not during running and all this, and then you get your best result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about chondroitin sulfate? So that's also something that we use quite a lot, at least in early stages of osteoarthritis. What is your experience with that?
It's the same story. So it can have very beneficial results if you find the right patient with the right problem. And it's just something that the cartilage needs or the tendon have as part of themselves. And that's something that, we're not born with it. We build it from in the embryo to a huge, the bodies that we have at some point. And if you offer these things to your body in the right contents and right amounts and in the right time, it can be absorbed and it can be put into healing tissues or just tissues that are being remodeled, because we're healing every second at a time. You're not just standing there. You're building new bone, you're building new muscle, new tendon all the time. And it's not just the chondroitin, it's all the little things. And the big misunderstanding, if my 2-year-old eats a piece of steak, and he absorbs everything. And he will grow about 2 feet, I feel, sometimes overnight, right? If I eat the same steak, most of the nutrients are not being absorbed because I'm just too old, right? So either I offer a little more or I accept that I don't have enough, right? So supplementation is nothing forbidden. It should be reasonable, it should be well balanced. You can over-supplement. People at this point, we see people with vitamin D intoxication because they just take way too much because they think they have to, right? And that's the balance again. Yeah. But it's something that we, starting with like you said, your 30s, you should think about doing these things.
Yeah. And in the end, healthy foods can never be substituted.
If you have access.
That's if you have access,
right.
which luckily
we do, but not everybody does,
no.
right?
So no, I fully agree with that. Well, unfortunately, we are running out of time. Is there anything really a strong take-home message that you would like to share or experience that you would like to share with us before we wrap up this session?
Well, maybe a funny story. When I was working together with Aki Hintsa a few years back, and he used to send me some sports people or Formula One drivers and so on, VIPs and so on. And one funny story was that the Formula One driver came and his both hands went numb when he was driving. So that's pretty much a problem.
When he was driving, or also
when he was
between?
Yeah, when he was driving. Okay. And then Aki brought him to me. I can't give him any medication or injections because next day he will be driving 300 k's an hour. So we did some treatment in the neck and in the thoracic spine, and that got better, and afterwards we found out nice stabilization exercises for the neck, and the problem got away. So in a way, so conservative management without medication, injections and all that stuff can once in a while be very powerful. Mm-hmm. So that's what keeps me fascinated in this job.
Absolutely. And also at home, just yourself doing strength exercises and stretching and so forth can really stabilize the vertebra, can really stabilize the core, and really avoid injury and avoid pain, as we know, which is so important. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It's been really a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure I'll see you tomorrow again. Hopefully we'll have other clients together. It's always a pleasure working with Hintsa Performance as well. So thank you very, very much for being here. And equally, I would also like to thank our sponsors. We could never do this series without you. So thank you very much. So goodbye for now from the Julius Baer Bank Film Studio. Thank you.